Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Ground and Pound podcast, the show where, as always, we're hitting you with them elbows of knowledge. And I'm joined by a warrior this week who knows the show must go on. He's feeling under the weather, but he still needed to give you the knowledge. Carlos, what's happening, Carlos?
Absolutely nothing, brother.
And the UFC heads over to the Apex for Burns taking on Morales. And as always, the Ground and Pound podcast is going to break it all down for you, starting off with the prelims, heading to the main event. And kicking this card off, we have got Tisha Pennington taking on Luana Pinheiro. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup?
Well, in this one, I ended up taking Tisha Pennington. Pinheiro throws everything into her strikes, moves decently defensively, enough to get out of the way, and is well-versed in submissions. Pennington has good in and out movement, blitzes to the pocket when she needs to get offensive, and good takedown defense. Wants to keep the fight standing. I think I'm going to take Tisha Torres because I think it's Tisha Pennington, excuse me. I think it's just too much movement, too much speed.
Yeah, I have to admit, a lot of the time breaking down Tisha Pennington, I still call her Tisha Torres. I still what we know her as a fan base. But yeah, 2 for Pennington here for me as well. Obviously coming off that win against Carla Esparza, the Cookie Monster. I didn't think there was a whole lot of controversy in that win. She landed the better strikes. Tisha Torres, or Tisha Pennington, see, I did it myself. She's even known to have good takedown defense. And Carla Esparza, being one of the more credentialed wrestlers, does have a tough time in keeping her down in that fight. Obviously a training partner with the former champion Nunes, who is her fiance, or Pennington, excuse me. And I think, to be honest with you, in this style matchup, I don't see how Luana's going to be able to win it. Luana comes out very aggressive in round 1. She swings wild with sort of overhands and kind of a left hook, right hand. She is very aggressive on the feet. However, she is coming off a 3-fight losing streak to women like Jillian Roberts, Amanda Ribas, for example. So a lot on the line for Luana here, but I think the volume is going to be too much for here against Pennington. I don't see how she's going to be able to implement her judo against Pennington. I think on the feet, she's going to be able to get outclassed by Pennington here. And what I also noticed in looking at kind of the stats and her previous fights is Tisha Pennington had a first-round win against Sam Hughes. She landed 52 significant strikes in that matchup. 52 significant strikes is a number that Luana struggles to make over the course of 3 rounds. So in some of Tisha Pennington's previous fights in 3 rounds, she's put up well over 100 strikes. I don't think Luana's going to be able to match the volume here of Pennington, and she's not going to be able to get Pennington to the ground. So 2 picks here for Pennington to get it done to kick off the card. And next up, we have Carlos Hernandez taking on Park Hyun-sung. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup?
Well, in this particular matchup, I didn't really get to see too much video on Hyun-sung Park. Maybe there was an issue with my internet. I just couldn't get any of the fights for him. But I think I'm going to have to go with Hernandez, mainly for that reason. He likes to strike. He likes to clinch. He likes to wrestle. He likes to grind out decisions. Why? Because I don't believe he has gets the respect that he needs to with the strikes that he's throwing. There's no consequences for his opponent if there's an opening. And I haven't seen much film on Park, so what I'm thinking is possibly Hernandez is going to push the pace. I haven't seen Park go deep into the rounds, so I think we're going to have to challenge his gas tank, and I just know he can make fights ugly as Hernandez. He can make fights ugly for himself and give himself a chance to win. So I went with Carlos Hernandez.
Yeah, very good point, actually. 8 out of 9 of Park's wins have actually been inside the distance, 4 by submission, 4 by knockout. So definitely think that that's a path to victory for Hernandez here to push the pace. But I am going to go with Park. I've liked some of the stuff I've seen from Park when he fought against Shannon Ross a few years back. He had nice rip to the body finish where he was able to put Shannon Ross down and ultimately get the finish there. I like his boxing. He is a pressure, kind of forward-thinking fighter. He always likes to pressure his opponent. And we've seen with Hernandez that, kind of a murderer's row in terms of the fights that he's been given for the UFC. He had to take on Tatsuro Taira and a few other great grapplers. Well, I do think here that if this fight stays on the feet, I do think that Park is going to be much more live in terms of the striking, the boxing. He's the heavier-handed fighter. He's the bigger, more physically dominant fighter in the cage. I do worry a little bit about what he's going to look like later on in fights, obviously because we haven't seen kind of push the pace. But to me, I think this fight really just comes down to keeping the fight on the feet and using his boxing. My only thing that I will say about Hernandez is that when he does get fights to the ground, he is tough to hold down. He's very good at scrambling and getting back to not just his feet, but into dominant positions. But I did see one fight with Park where he got taken down or was in some sort of scramble. He was able to lock up a body triangle, take the back. He looked very, very fluent in the grappling and the kind of exchanges on the ground. So give me Park here. I think he's going to be safe no matter where the fight goes. I would like to see him kind of pressure Carlos and keep it on the feet, but I'm going to go with Park here to keep his undefeated streak alive. And next up, we have Denise Gomes taking on Elise Reed, and I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this one?
Well, I ended up taking Denise Gomes. Hard strikes, aggressive attack. She's 25 years old. She's just getting better every time she gets into the ring. Nothing but upside. So I figured, yeah, that's what's going to keep happening. Reed, she does work pretty good behind a solid jab, carries her hands low and wide, which is obviously like a gift for someone like Denise Gomes to come inside and counter. Reed is game to mix it up. If you press her, she's going to sit in the pocket with you. But I just feel Gomes has too much firepower. She's ready to finish it on the feet. She's ready to take you down as well. She's well-versed. She's got some submission victories, and she's definitely down to ground and pound as well. So I took Gomes in this one.
Yeah, confident pick here for Gomes. I can't get off the Gomes train this early in her career. 4-2 inside the UFC currently. She is a training partner of Carla Rosa and Jessica Andrade, who are both way more credentialed than a woman like Elise Reed. We've seen with Elise Reed that all 4 of her losses inside of MMA have all come via her getting finished. So I think that spells a recipe for disaster here against a woman with the power of Gomes with the hands. We've seen in the past that Gomes, has been taken down and controlled on the ground, but I think that she's making a conscious effort to keep fights on the feet, working on her wrestling with Jessica Andrade. She showed in her last fight that she tried to implement a little bit of grappling, which I didn't necessarily hate. I know the commentary team didn't like it too much because she had the much faster, more powerful hands, but I like the fact that the fighter's showing an ability to try to mix that in because she knows that's going to be a weapon for other people. And the thing to me with Elise Reed is that I don't think she's going to be able to gain the respect of Gomes. She's Taekwondo black belt. However, she does not really pack a whole lot of pop in her shots. Most of her wins as well, I believe all of her wins have come against women with no winning records inside the UFC. So I think that's a recipe for disaster here against Gomes. I think she's going to be the bigger, stronger woman. And I also wrote in my notes here that if Elise Reed was a condiment, she'd probably be mayonnaise and Gomes would be hot sauce. So I think the hot spiciness of Gomes gets it done here this Saturday. And next up, we have Luana Santos taking on Tainara Lisboa. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this one?
I ended up going with Lisboa. She's the more physically imposing of the two. Both can fight standing. Both can fight on the ground. But Lisboa is more of the bull, and Santos is more of the matador. One of the issues being is that Santos, if she can't back you up, she has no real ability defensively to be able to shut you down. So I don't see her being very effective in the matador role. Also, she's been bouncing to 135. I think she did it one other time. And right now, this fight's at 35. And I don't think she gave herself the time to get a little bit more solid and a little bit more strength for the weight class. I think she just popped up. And, with excuse me, guys. Sorry, guys. With the pro kickboxing background, Lisboa, I think that she's just going to bully Santos around the ring. So I went with Lisboa.
Yeah, two for Lisboa here. I like her here as the underdog. We've seen with Santos, like Carlos mentioned, that flyweight, she has had her struggles. I don't really see what coming up to bantamweight again is going to really do for her here. My only real concern is that Lisboa is coming off a 16-month layoff due to knee surgery. I had to do a little bit of deep diving to find out what that knee surgery was. She actually had to have cartilage reconstruction surgery. So at the age of 34, 16-month layoff could be a little bit of a problem. But I saw footage of her training in October of last year, and she looked, full contact, sparring, everything. She looked pretty good. I think this is going to be a sort of Real get back motivational spot for her to kind of get back into the division. And two-time Muay Thai world champion, higher level kickboxer. She's got Muay Thai fights against Valentina Shevchenko and in kickboxing against Valentina Shevchenko. She made a good account of herself in those fights. She's very, very credentialed on the feet. And Carlos used a great analogy when he said about the matador role and the bull and the matador. And to me, I think that that's exactly how this fight plays out. We saw against Casey O'Neill, Santos struggled with the forward pressure of O'Neill in that fight. And I think if she struggles with the forward pressure of a girl like O'Neill, she's really going to struggle with the forward pressure and high-level striking of Lisboa here. I don't think that the judo base here of Santos is going to really mean a whole lot. Santos, doesn't necessarily have the wrestling. She likes to go to headlocks. I don't think she's really going to get that on a girl like Lisboa, who's going to be bigger, more physically stronger, and ready to prove a point on Saturday. So 2 for Lisboa here to get it done with the striking. And next up, we have Conor Mathews taking on Yadir DelValle, and UFC debut for DelValle. But does that mean Carlos is going to pick him? We'll find out. Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
Oh, I went with Yadir DelValle because both guys are very well rounded. I actually give the edge and just skill, how he actually like technically does the moves. I gave it to Conor Mathews because we watch his fights. He looks very technically sound, and he's transitioning on the ground very smoothly, and his ground and pound is pretty smooth. Standing up, nice slick 1-2s, but the problem is like he waits a little bit too much to attack, and I think that Yadir has that extra gear. He's going to come inside, and whether you slip his first punch or his second, he's going to catch you with the third or the fourth strike. So he loves to push the pace. He's looking for a finish. I went with Yadir.
Yeah, 2 for Yadir here. I've always found it difficult to trust Conor Mathews. I think that he's a decent grappler once the fight gets to the ground. He just doesn't have the means to get the fight to the ground. We saw in his fight with, is it Begzat? I'm trying to think of his name, Bazookian, excuse me, who isn't UFC level, who pretty much sucks, that he got knocked out by Bazookian in that fight. And I always find it hard to trust Conor Mathews. I think he comes out very aggressive in round 1. He tends to leave himself exposed. But on the other hand, with Yadir here, I struggle because UFC debuts, you never know what you're really going to get. You never know 8-0 how that record really is going to hold up to the credentials of the UFC. Does have a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, so obviously very well versed on the ground. But I kind of give him the edge here in sort of the physical element of the fight. I think Yadir is going to be much more physically strong out of the two. I think in the clinch, he's going to use elbows and knees. I think if he wants to get the fight to the ground, he can do that. But I think on the feet overall, he's going to pack a little bit more of a wallop. And a little bit of a fun fact that they mentioned on the Contender Series that Yadir actually works at the family pizza truck. So I'm surprised how this guy can keep a full set of abs and be as ripped as he is, being around all of that dough. But I think he makes absolute dough out of Conor Mathews this week. So 2 for Yadir to get it done. And next up, we have Jared Gordon taking on Thiago Moisés, and I'm going to kick this one off. And I've always been a pretty big fan of Moisés. I've always been fairly high on him, but he does kind of ebb and flow as far as his performances are concerned. Trains out of American Top Team. And he tends to lose to high-level guys and beat some of the lower-level guys in the division. So I am going to pick him here in this matchup. He's lost to guys like Islam, BSD, Ludovic Klein, Joel Alvarez. So not necessarily that the worst of the worst to lose to, but he tries to mix in takedowns, which I think he's going to struggle here against Jared Gordon. Jared Gordon known for having good takedown defense. Jared Gordon doesn't tend to throw a lot of kicks, however. He likes to keep things at boxing range, and I think that Moisés is going to be a little bit slicker on the feet with the boxing. And I think the main weapon for Moisés, which he's shown in a few of his fights, is the calf kick. Gordon tends to be pretty heavy on that front leg. I think Moisés can chew up the calf, really affect Gordon's movement here. If he wants to try to mix in takedowns, I don't think he'll get them, but I think it will give Gordon something to think about. But I'm going to take Moisés here to get it done with the better camp. And I think this is somebody that if he wants to progress up into the rankings and higher level, get towards a title shot, he's going to need to beat a guy like Jared Gordon at 36 years old. But Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
I also took Thiago Moisés. His inconsistency has always been an issue out of the two guys in here. And in most fights, he's usually the more athletic of the two. He has a solid base. He has good technique. He's very technically sound. Sometimes it looks like he's maximizing abilities, but then he's going in there against guys that are killers, and is it that he's not that good, or is he just like not meant to go over that line, to get to greatness? And now is the time to make the push if I were him. But yeah, it's hard to trust his IQ as well. And with Jared Gordon, he's actually a pretty smart fighter. He's got good takedown defense, likes to keep it in boxing range. If anything's gonna mess up Thiago Moisés' ability, it's gonna be keeping that fight in boxing range, because sometimes he tends to fold in that range. But I'm still gonna stick with Thiago Moisés.
Yeah, the UFC giving Moisés back-to-back old heads. We've got Jared Gordon. He just beat Trey Ogden. So we'll see if the 30-year-old's going to enter his prime and get it done on Saturday. And next up, we have Matheus Camilo, excuse me. He's making his UFC debut to take on Gabe Green. And it does have to be noted here that Gabe Green, coming from welterweight down to lightweight, we haven't seen him in a while. A pretty long layoff due to injuries. So it'll be interesting to see how he does in this matchup. And Carlos, who do you have in this matchup?
I know it's probably not the right thing to do, but I ended up going with Matheus Camilo. Green is coming down from 170 to 55, and there's no problem with that. It's just the fact that I don't know how he performs at that weight, and I don't know how long of a time he gave himself to acclimate to that. So he's given some. He was giving up some size at 170, so he ended up coming down, and now he's going to be the bigger man. But you have a kid that likes to push the pace. He likes to throw some heat, and he has good takedown defense. He can bang. Um, Green being naturally the bigger person, how does he handle the strikes? I mean, just because you're coming down smaller, you are sucking some of that water and some of that energy out of your body. Like, how do you handle the strikes? Was the weight cut advantageous for you, or was it foolish, or is it effective for your conditioning? Maybe his conditioning isn't as great at 55. Those are all things we're gonna have to find out on Saturday. But I went with Camilo.
Yeah, I just want to point out on the screen, guys, that 170 there is it actually should be 155. So I'll have a word with the producer of the show and make sure that we get that cleaned up for next week and there's no more mistakes. But error on my bad. But yeah, I actually am going to go with Gabe Green here. I kind of and ahed about this one. I was flipping, back and forth, but UFC debuts, I'm always a little bit skeptical. And to me, when I watch tape on Camilo, does have nice striking, definitely the faster guy out of the two. But to me, he struggles with pressure. And we saw in the Ian Gary fight with Gabe Green likes to pressure. He likes to come forward. He likes to get into the clinch. He has good submissions. Both guys hold on to a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt. But I did notice as well that Camilo has been subbed twice in both of his losses. And I think Gabe Green's just size here and overall sort of brutish strength, I think, will play a factor. As long as the weight cut goes fine, I think that Green can come in here. I think if he mixes in takedowns, I think that will serve him well. I am a little bit worried about the chin. I'm concerned about how he handles it after coming back after a layoff. He did get brutally knocked out by Brian Battle in his last fight. Coming down in weight, like Carlos said, draining the water out of you. It's not necessarily mean that you're going to take punches well from 55ers. And Camilo can crack, so we'll see. It should be an interesting matchup, but I think the size here of Gabe Green, I think he's going to mix in the takedowns and ultimately maybe even find a submission win here. But I did do a little bit of Instagram diving, a little bit of Instagram and kind of research overall on social media. And Gabe Green does look a lot slimmer. He looks like he's definitely taken the time to kind of lose the weight and not necessarily just go with a heavy, hardcore weight cut here. So it'll be interesting to see how this one plays out. But Gibby Green is the underdog in this matchup. And next up, we have Costa taking on Julian Juicy J Erosa. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup?
In this matchup, I went with Melquizael Costa. Erosa wants to go to war, but he's very hittable. So at times it works against him. He wants to drain your gas tank as well, which is fine because he's always ready to go. He's always ready to display his toughness, which, he is a good fighter. He shouldn't have to do that, but that's just how he fights. Sometimes it fails him, and I think Melky is just strong enough to exploit that. I think if you let yourself get hit and you leave yourself open and stand right in front of your opponent, especially someone like Melky who's got hard strikes and he's, what I did see against Christian Rodriguez with Melky is the fact that a lot of the hard wrestling and clinch work up against the fence, it was very tiring to him, and he was starting to fade late in the third round, but that's what happens anytime you're in any bit of a clinch or you're grappling. So I think the space that Julian Erosa likes to leave, I think it's in Melky's favor. I don't think conditioning is going to be a problem, and I think he gets the win here on Saturday.
Yeah. I'm going with Costa as well. I like the fact that I think Costa is kind of coming into his own right now on a 3-fight win streak, and I know that Julian Erosa is coming off of a big 3-fight win streak. But to me, if you look at the level of competition and who he's beat, I think Costa's wins are a little bit more impressive. Costa does possess a sort of a Muay Thai style. He likes to kick from range, and one of the things that I was quite impressed with in that last fight against Rodriguez was we've seen Rodriguez be tough to kind of take down and win a lot of scrambles. Well, Costa was able to get into some pretty advantageous positions, get takedowns, and get into dominant positions. So I wouldn't mind Costa mixing in some takedowns here against Erosa. Erosa very big for the weight class at 6'1". I don't know if Costa's going to necessarily struggle with the range because there is only 3 inches between the two of them. But I think with Erosa, to be honest with you, at 35 years old, coming off that win against Darren Elkins, not to take anything away from that victory, but Darren Elkins, kind of looked like he's done, altogether. So I don't necessarily credit that win for Erosa here. And to me, I just think that Costa's kind of finding that belief in himself. 28, he looks like he's coming into his prime. Training with some higher level guys over there in Brazil. Not Diego Lima, shooter box style fighter, very, very aggressive. And I think that's going to be enough here to get it done with Erosa. And Erosa's been knocked out in 7 of his losses. So I do think that Costa could find the chin or maybe get a takedown and use ground and pound here. But I feel pretty confident about Costa this week on a card that's definitely filled with some traps and some loopholes. I think Costa gets it done this week. And next up, we have Dustin Stoltzfus taking on Norzen Ruziboev. And Carlos, I'm going to pass this one to you. Who do you have in this matchup?
I went with Ruziboev. Not confident in it, and my reasons being is like, yes, he's longer, he's faster, he stands tall, so it's going to be hard. He's looking to finish, but I just there's something about Stoltzfus where it seems like he can kind of manhandle Nurselton once they get in a clinch. You know what I mean? There's Ruziboev is he likes to keep the distance in between his opponents and him, and I went with him because I don't see a way that Stoltzfus actually cuts that distance. The reach is kind of identical. Like I think Ruziboev has a 1-inch advantage, but he's also 6'5", so you got to punch upward. He likes to stand tall. Yeah, I mean, I went with Ruziboev. I'm not too confident in it because Ruziboev also gets reckless at times as he's coming forward. But yeah, I don't see how Stoltzfus actually closes the distance. That's who I got.
Yeah, I'm going with Ruziboev here as well. Probably a little bit more confidence on my side. I think, to be honest with you, I think wherever this fight goes, I think Ruziboev is probably going to be able to find the finish. We have seen with Stoltzfus, he is very physically strong, as Carlos mentioned, especially in the clinch and getting takedowns. We saw in his last fight against Marc-Andre Barrios, he was able to sleep Barrios once they got back to the feet. I don't think that's going to be available here for Ruziboev. I think he's going to struggle to be able to get in on the 6'5" frame of Ruziboev. I don't think that wrestling is going to be there, and I think that he does throw sort of big, powerful strikes, but I think that's going to leave him to be countered by Ruziboev. I like it wherever the fight goes. I think Ruziboev by finish, either by submission off of his back or taking the back of Stoltzfus in a transition, or I think even on the feet, I think Ruziboev can land that counter right hand that he landed against, who was it? Bruno Ferreira in that counter right hand that he landed there. I think that's going to be available here against Stoltzfus. So a little bit more confidence on my side here for Ruziboev to get it done. And next up, we have Sodiq Yusuff taking on Mairon Santos, the Ultimate Fighter winner. Carlos, who do you think gets the win on Saturday?
I'm taking Sodiq Yusuff. I'm going with Yusuff. He likes to probe his jab out there. He actually flips it out too, just a little bit for spacing. Doesn't get too reckless in the pocket until he knows you're hurt. Then he comes in swarming you. When he hits the mat, he's also very good on the mat. His ground and pound is strong, punches are hard on the bottom, and he controls his opponents pretty easily on the bottom. Very strong guy. I think it may be too much too soon for someone like Myron Santos because, if excuse me, guys. Francis Marshall versus Myron Santos, I thought was a easy outline if or blueprint if you want to know how to beat Santos. Now I don't see Yusuff using wrestling like that, but it would be a perfect game plan because that's what took him out of his game. He was so worried about the takedowns, he couldn't really open up on his strikes too much. And even though you know Santos got the decision, I still believe that that's the game plan against him. And if I were Yusuff, I would use a lot of clinch work, trying to get this to the ground. And as he's getting up, throw some hammers, throw some elbows, especially attacks his legs. I just think that Yusuff can soften him up and control him on the ground. So I'm going Sodiq.
Yeah, I'm also going to go with Sodiq here. It kind of surprised me that Sodiq was the betting underdog, only slight betting underdog in this matchup. And as Carlos mentioned against Santos when he fought against Francis Marshall, that was a complete robbery. Robbery in full form. I don't know how that one got by, but Santos Muay Thai striker, as I mentioned, ultimate fighter winner, and he's got good takedown defense. But I just believe that this is a big step up in competition here. Yusuff coming off of a year layoff due to injury. But again, deep dive, looking at the Instagram, looking at the socials, he looks pretty good. He looks ready to go. It wasn't too big of a serious injury either. And we saw in his fight against Edson Barbosa, very, very live in the first round. This is a 3-round fight. That was a 5-round fight. He came out against Edson Barbosa, and he pretty much gassed out trying to finish Barbosa on the feet. I think that he's got a lot of power in the hands. He does like to box. He's very, very crisp. He does put a lot of power into a lot of his shots. And we haven't really seen anybody the level of Santos. I don't think Santos is really going to be able to deal with the level of Yusuff. I think that he's got much more UFC experience. And like Carlos mentioned, if he wants to mix in the wrestling, I think that's available for him here. I don't think that Santos is necessarily ready for this step up in competition. So it kind of surprises me here that after that robbery, he's the betting favorite. So give me Yusuff as well. I think he gets it done on the feet or on the ground. And that brings us to our co-main event, ladies and gentlemen. And if you haven't already, hit that like and subscribe button for the Ground and Pound podcast as we break down Paul Craig taking on Rodolfo Bellato. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup?
In this matchup, I went with Bellato. Although he's very sloppy and reckless at times, looks a little clumsy into the later rounds. I feel that if he hurts Paul Craig on the feet, what's going to happen is he should keep separation. He shouldn't dive to him on the ground for ground and pound and go for the finish. I think he should get back, let the referee, stand up Craig and keep it on the feet. I mean, you just want to have the most advantageous route to victory that you can. And for some reason, Paul Craig, once you get down on the mat with him, he loves to throw his legs up. We've seen him catch people in triangles late in the fight after getting beat up. We've seen him catch him in arm bars. And, if I were Bellato, I would just try to keep this on the feet. Even if he goes down, he's hurt, let him get back up. I think he could finish it there. And, so I went with Bellato.
Yeah, either way this one goes, I think either guy's going to be able to get a finish on Saturday. And I think it's going to kick things off for a good fight in the main event. And speaking of main event, we have Michael Morales taking on Gilbert Burns. And I'm going to pass this one to you, Carlos. Who do you have in this matchup?
Well, I ended up going with Michael Morales. Burns has to overcome a height and a massive reach advantage, and forget the youth advantage as well. Morales, I think he's 25. I'm not sure. And Morales is very composed, very strong. He's doesn't just throw recklessly. He's defensively sound. He has good takedown defense. Burns keeps a high guard. Can be a nightmare if he gets you on the ground. He's a nightmare and trying to take you to the ground because sometimes he's a little bit relentless going for that takedown as well. Either one of them could get the KO on the feet. Who knows? If Burns hits you with something strong, he might be able to put him out and vice versa. But I do see Morales having the advantage because what is it, a 9-inch reach advantage? So Burns has got to be very confident on the way in that he's got some bit of a distraction through a jab, a low kick, change an angle, something before he comes inside. he's going to have to pressure. He's going to have to take him down. Look for, look for knees and uppercuts on his way in just to make sure he doesn't get clipped with anything. But for some reason, like, I just think I love the upside on Michael Morales. I think he's getting better with every fight. And yeah, so I went with him.
Yeah, big step up in competition for Morales this weekend. And it does kind of surprise me when you look at the odds here. Gilbert Burns is something like a plus 500 underdog here. So obviously the bookmakers aren't very high on Burns anymore. He did win the first 2 rounds against Jack Della Maddalena with his wrestling before getting tagged and finished with that knee. But Burns, obviously, very, very grizzled veteran, very good on the ground, high level BJJ practitioner, throws nice overhands. But 38 years old, a little bit hard to trust here, especially like Carlos mentioned with the reach advantage that Morales possesses. I do think that, this will be kind of a tough fight for Morales. I don't necessarily think that he should be this big of a favorite. I don't think the odds reflect how tough this fight will be. Morales has a nice jab, very quick hands. He is very composed. He doesn't necessarily he's got good cardio, but he hasn't necessarily been pushed in terms of a high pace. Maybe that's Burns' plan here, is to kind of drown him in deep waters in championship rounds. Morales does have a wrestling background. I believe he was a wrestling champion in Ecuador. How high a level that is in terms of wrestling, we'll find out on Saturday if Burns tries to mix in the takedowns. But I think, honestly, 13 years age gap with the big reach advantage, like Carlos mentioned, I think Morales here gets it done. But I do think it's kind of crazy that Burns is this big of an underdog. And that about wraps things up here on the Ground and Pound podcast. And if you haven't already and you're enjoying the content, ladies and gentlemen, hit that like and subscribe button. And before we wrap things up, Carlos, is there anything that you want to say to the people?
I hope you guys enjoyed the show. Sorry I sounded a little under the weather. And don't forget to like and subscribe, gentlemen.
Yep. And that's how much of a war. Exactly. Can't forget the ladies. And he does it for you, ladies and gentlemen. He shows up. He gives you the content. He gives you the detail. I think that's worthy of a like and subscribe if I've ever seen one. And we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.